It was a chilly evening when I received the call that changed everything. The voice on the other end, hesitant, almost trembling, mentioned my brother. "It's just a small loan," he'd said weeks ago. But something didn't sit right. As I stared out of the office window, the sinking feeling in my chest grew heavier, whispering that there was more to the story than I'd been told. A few days later, the first clue surfaced in the form of a legal document I was never supposed to see. It wasn't addressed to me, but to my brother. The words, "transfer of ownership," stood out in bold. My heart raced as I scanned the rest of the letter, which detailed a business sale agreement. My business, my pride, my legacy had been signed away without my knowledge. I tried to rationalize it. Perhaps it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew there was no denying the cold truth. Determined to find answers, I began retracing every interaction I'd had with my brother in recent weeks. The late-night calls, his sudden interest in my financial plans, his evasive responses when I mentioned expansion projects, it all started to make sense. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and with each revelation, my trust in him crumbled further. That evening, I found the final nail in the coffin, a signed contract in his name, proving he'd sold my business for personal gain. My world shattered. Life had always seemed picture perfect. I had built my business from scratch, pouring every ounce of my time, effort, and heart into it. Over the years, the small office with 2 desks had grown into a thriving company with dozens of employees. It wasn't just a business to me, it was my dream, my identity. My brother, Adam, had always been my biggest cheerleader. We grew up in a modest household, relying on each other for strength and support. Adam had been my confidant, the one person I could always trust without question. When I expanded the business and offered him a managerial role, it felt natural, almost poetic. I believed our bond was unbreakable, and our collaboration was proof that family and business could coexist harmoniously. Outside of work, my life was equally fulfilling. I was surrounded by a loving circle of friends and colleagues who admired my perseverance. On weekends, Adam and I often celebrated small victories together over dinner or drinks, recounting childhood memories and making plans for the future. Everything seemed stable, almost idyllic. But as they say, the higher you climb, the farther you have to fall. Adam wasn't just my brother, he was my best friend. Growing up, we were inseparable. He was the one who encouraged me to take risks and dream bigger when I doubted myself. When I started my business, Adam was the first to roll up his sleeves and help, even before he officially joined the team. We shared everything, laughs, frustrations, and a vision for the company. He was the first person I called when I secured a major client, and he was always by my side during challenging times. I trusted him implicitly, so when he mentioned needing funds for a personal investment, I didn't hesitate. "It's just a loan," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "I'll pay you back in no time." The words didn't even register as a potential threat to our relationship, because to me, Adam was incapable of betrayal. It wasn't until months later that I began noticing changes in Adam's behavior. They were subtle at first, a missed meeting here, a vague response there. He began showing up late to work, claiming he had family matters to attend to. When I asked for details, his answers felt rehearsed, lacking the openness I was used to. Then there was the sudden interest in areas of the business he'd never cared for before. Adam started asking pointed questions about our financial structure, vendor contracts, and even legal clauses. At first, I brushed it off as him taking a more active role in the company, but something about his tone felt off. What really struck me was his newfound habit of avoiding eye contact. Whenever I discussed long-term plans for the business or hinted at new opportunities, he'd change the subject. It was unlike him, and though I couldn't put my finger on it, I felt the first twinge of doubt creeping into my mind. I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, this was Adam, my brother, my rock. But those small, seemingly insignificant changes were just the beginning. The moment that shattered my blind trust came on an otherwise ordinary afternoon. I was reviewing paperwork in my office when a colleague accidentally forwarded me an email chain between Adam and an unknown party. The email referenced a potential sale of assets. My assets. The wording was vague, but it was clear that something significant was being discussed behind my back. I confronted Adam about the email later that day, but his response left me more unsettled. He laughed it off, saying it was a misunderstanding and that he'd explain it later. But he never did. From that day on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. The brother I had trusted with my business, my dream, and my life seemed to be hiding something monumental. Determined to uncover the truth, I began connecting the dots. I started by reviewing Adam's recent activities, his calendar, his emails, and even casual conversations we'd had. Small inconsistencies started to emerge. Meetings he claimed to attend but never did, payments made to unknown accounts, and documents he'd signed without informing me. I also noticed changes in the way other employees interacted with him. They seemed hesitant, almost fearful, as if they knew something I didn't. When I pressed them for answers, they looked away, muttering vague excuses. Late one night, I stayed in the office to dig deeper. I sifted through months of financial reports, contracts, and emails. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Adam had been secretly orchestrating the sale of my business. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was calculated. He had used my trust, my resources, and my life's work for his own gain. Each discovery was like a dagger to the heart, but it also fueled my determination. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Determined to uncover the full extent of Adam's betrayal, I embarked on a relentless investigation. It began with late nights in the office, poring over financial records and internal communications. Every transaction, every email, every meeting, nothing was left unchecked. The process was painstaking, but each discovery brought me closer to the truth. The first clue came from an unexplained bank transfer, a significant sum sent to an account I didn't recognize. Tracing the account led me to a shell company, and my suspicions deepened when I realized Adam was listed as the sole proprietor. This wasn't a simple mistake or oversight. It was deliberate and calculated. My next lead came from an accountant who mentioned discrepancies in recent vendor payments. These payments had been redirected to third-party accounts, none of which had any legitimate connection to the company. The more I dug, the more threads I found to pull. Each thread unraveled. A story of deceit, manipulation, and greed. I also started tracking Adam's movements. I noticed he frequently left the office for hours at a time, claiming to be in meetings. One day, I decided to follow him. He drove to a high-end restaurant, where he met with a man I later identified as a representative from a competitor company. Watching them shake hands and exchange files made my blood boil. Employees began sharing small details, too. One whispered about overhearing a conversation where Adam mentioned closing the deal soon. Another reported noticing Adam removing confidential files late at night. Every piece of information added fuel to the fire, and with each revelation, my determination to uncover the truth grew stronger. The deeper I dug, the more Adam's web of lies began to unravel. One particularly damning discovery was a series of forged contracts bearing my signature. These documents authorized the transfer of company assets to the shell company Adam had set up. The sight of my name on those contracts, written in a forgery so precise it could fool anyone, left me stunned. Emails revealed even more of Adam's deceit. He had been negotiating with multiple buyers, framing the company as a lucrative opportunity for acquisition. He painted himself as the sole decision-maker, assuring them that everything was under control. His tone in those emails was cold and transactional, a stark contrast to the brotherly bond I thought we shared. The lies extended to our family, too. Adam had told them I was overwhelmed with work, and that he was stepping in to ease my burden. My parents, trusting him implicitly, believed his words, and even praised him for being such a supportive sibling. Knowing how deeply his lies had infiltrated every aspect of my life was both infuriating and heartbreaking. One day, I confronted Adam casually, asking him about a specific financial discrepancy I had uncovered. His response was dismissive. "It's nothing to worry about, just a minor adjustment." But his avoidance and nervous demeanor told me otherwise. It was clear he was trying to keep me in the dark. The betrayal extended beyond just financial. matters. Adam had also been undermining my authority within the company. Employees started coming to him with decisions they would have previously brought to me. He had positioned himself as the company's leader, leaving me in the shadows of my own creation. Despite the mounting evidence, I needed definitive proof to confront Adam and make my case unshakable. I hired a forensic accountant to comb through the company's financial records with a fine-tooth comb. The results were damning. Adam had been siphoning funds into his shell company for months, using fake invoices and unauthorized transactions. The forensic report also revealed a timeline of events. Adam had begun plotting his scheme over a year ago, carefully laying the groundwork to ensure I wouldn't notice. The sheer premeditation of it all was staggering. One night, as I reviewed the forensic report, I found the smoking gun, a finalized contract for the sale of the company. My company. The document detailed the terms of the sale, the buyer, and the agreed-upon price. It was all there in black and white, along with my forged signature at the bottom. I stared at the contract, my hands trembling. This was it. This was the undeniable proof of Adam's betrayal. My initial shock quickly gave way to a surge of determination. I wouldn't let him get away with this. To strengthen my case further, I began compiling a dossier of evidence. Every email, contract, bank statement, and witness testimony was meticulously documented. By the time I finished, I had a mountain of proof that left no room for doubt. The moment I had been dreading finally arrived, confronting Adam. I arranged a meeting at my home, away from the office and prying eyes. The atmosphere was tense as he walked in, his usual air of confidence intact. "I wanted to talk to you about something important," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. Adam raised an eyebrow but said nothing. I placed the stack of evidence on the table between us. "I know what you've been doing," I said, meeting his gaze. His expression shifted from confusion to panic as he leafed through the documents. This isn't what it looks like," he stammered, but his words lacked conviction. "It's exactly what it looks like," I replied, my voice cold. "You sold my company, Adam. You forged my signature. You lied to everyone." Adam tried to justify his actions, claiming he had acted in the company's best interest. "You were holding it back," he said. "I saw an opportunity, and I took it. It was for both of us." His words felt like knives. "For both of us?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You were willing to destroy everything I've worked for, everything I trusted you with, for your own greed." The confrontation escalated into a heated argument. Adam's excuses grew weaker with each passing moment, and the weight of the evidence crushed any attempt he made to defend himself. By the end, he was silent, his head hung low in defeat. As painful as the confrontation was, it solidified my resolve to seek justice. I knew I couldn't rely solely on emotional appeals. I needed to approach this strategically. The first step was securing legal counsel. I hired a team of top-notch lawyers who specialized in corporate fraud and forgery. With their help, I built an airtight case against Adam, ensuring that every piece of evidence was admissible in court. Next, I reached out to key employees and clients who had been affected by Adam's actions. Their testimonies added credibility to my case and helped expose the full extent of his betrayal. Many of them were eager to support me, having felt the impact of Adam's manipulations firsthand. Finally, I planned a public confrontation to reveal the truth. This wasn't just about reclaiming my company, it was about holding Adam accountable and restoring the trust that had been shattered. The plan was bold, but it was the only way to ensure justice was served. Throughout this process, I wrestled with conflicting emotions. Adam wasn't just a business partner, he was my brother, someone I had loved and trusted my entire life. The thought of tearing our family apart was agonizing, but the alternative, allowing him to get away with his betrayal, was unthinkable. There were nights when doubt crept in, whispering that I should let it go and rebuild quietly. But every time I considered backing down, I remembered the sacrifices I had made to build the company and the people who depended on me. In the end, I realized that seeking justice wasn't just about punishing Adam. It was about reclaiming my life and proving to myself that I had the strength to overcome even the deepest betrayal. With that thought in mind, I steeled myself for the battle ahead. I knew that exposing Adam's betrayal had to be strategic and impactful, so I meticulously planned the confrontation. I organized a meeting at the office, inviting key employees, close family members, and even a few trusted clients. The invitation was framed as an important announcement regarding the company's future. Adam was visibly excited, likely assuming I was stepping down or handing over more control to him. Little did he know that this meeting would mark the beginning of his downfall. I arranged for a lawyer to be present, along with a forensic accountant, who had compiled a detailed report of Adam's fraudulent activities. The room was tense as everyone gathered, murmuring in anticipation. I stood at the front, scanning the faces of those who had unknowingly been impacted by Adam's deceit. My heart pounded, but I reminded myself that this wasn't just about me. It was about justice and accountability. When Adam arrived, his confident demeanor was immediately apparent. He greeted people warmly, completely oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. Once everyone was seated, I began. "Thank you all for coming today," I said, my voice steady. "What I'm about to share will change everything you thought. You knew about this company and about trust." The tension in the room was palpable as I began laying out the facts. I started with a brief history of the company, emphasizing the trust and dedication that had built it into what it was. Then, I shifted the tone. "Unfortunately," I said, looking directly at Adam, "not everyone has upheld those values." Adam's smile faltered. "What are you talking about?" he asked, feigning innocence. I opened a folder containing the forged contracts, financial discrepancies, and emails. "This," I said, holding up the papers, "is proof of how you've been systematically dismantling the company I built, with no regard for anyone else." Adam's face turned pale as the room erupted in murmurs. "This is a misunderstanding," he stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" I asked, stepping closer. "Because these documents say otherwise. And let's not forget the countless employees and clients who've come forward with their stories about your lies and manipulations." He tried to interject, but I didn't let him. "You sold the company behind my back, Adam. You forged my signature and pocketed the profits. And you did it all while pretending to be my biggest supporter." The room fell silent. Tears welled up in Adam's eyes, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of fear. One of the clients, visibly furious, stood up. "I trusted you, Adam," they said. "You lied to all of us." The betrayal was no longer just my burden. It was now shared by everyone in that room. I took a deep breath, knowing the moment of truth had arrived. "Let me show you exactly what Adam has done," I said, projecting a slideshow onto the screen. Each slide detailed his actions: unauthorized transactions, forged contracts, and email exchanges with buyers. The evidence was irrefutable. I narrated each point with precision, leaving no room for doubt or excuses. "Here," I said, pointing to a particular email, "is where Adam agreed to sell the company for far less than its value, just so he could pocket the money quickly." Adam's attempts to interrupt were drowned out by the growing anger in the room. Family members looked at him with shock and disbelief, while employees exchanged whispers of outrage. "Why, Adam?" I asked, turning to him. "Why would you do this to me? To us?" His voice broke as he tried to defend himself. I thought it was the right thing to do. You thought wrong," I interrupted. "You didn't just betray me. You betrayed everyone who believed in this company and its future." The final blow came when my lawyer stepped forward, presenting the legal case against Adam. "These documents," the lawyer said, "prove not only fraud, but also criminal intent. Legal action is already underway." The room erupted once more, but this time it was clear that Adam had lost all credibility. He sank into his chair, his head in his hands, as the weight of his actions came crashing down. The aftermath of the confrontation was swift and brutal. Word of Adam's betrayal spread quickly, reaching colleagues, clients, and even local media. His once sterling reputation was reduced to ashes in a matter of days. Clients began pulling their contracts, unwilling to associate with someone so dishonest. Employees who had once admired Adam now avoided him entirely, their disappointment evident in their cold stares and whispered conversations. On a personal level, the fallout was equally devastating for Adam. Friends and family distanced themselves, unable to reconcile the man they knew with the actions he had taken. Invitations to events dried up, and his social circle quickly dwindled. Financially, the consequences were catastrophic. With the legal case against him gaining traction, Adam faced the prospect of not only losing the profits he had stolen, but also paying significant damages. His personal assets were frozen, leaving him unable to maintain the lavish lifestyle he had grown accustomed to. As I watched Adam's life unravel, I felt a mix of emotions. There was satisfaction in seeing justice served, but there was also an undeniable sadness. This was my brother, after all, a man I had once loved and trusted. But as painful as it was, I knew this was the only way to ensure accountability and protect what I had built. In the end, the truth had come to light, and Adam was left to face the consequences of his actions, alone. Adam's downfall was as public as it was swift. The exposure of his betrayal didn't just affect his reputation. It dismantled the life he had so carefully curated through lies and deceit. Clients who once praised him for his charm and resourcefulness severed ties, their trust irrevocably broken. Vendors he had negotiated with refused to conduct business, citing ethical concerns. Socially, Adam became a pariah. Friends who had stood by him during his rise now wanted nothing to do with him. Invitations to gatherings ceased, and even casual acquaintances began to avoid him. His once active social media accounts fell silent, the flood of congratulatory comments replaced by silence, or worse, public disdain. Financially, the consequences were devastating. With the legal case underway, his accounts were frozen, and the assets he had amassed, both from his legitimate earnings and ill-gotten gains, were seized to repay damages. He sold his car, his house, and nearly everything he owned to cover the costs of his legal defense. The life of luxury he had envisioned for himself was replaced by one of struggle and uncertainty. On a personal level, the betrayal fractured our family. While some relatives initially tried to mediate, their patience wore thin as the extent of Adam's actions became clear. He found himself isolated, a stark contrast to the charismatic figure he once was. For me, the road to recovery wasn't easy, but it was worth every step. The legal battle to reclaim what Adam had stolen was exhausting, but with the overwhelming evidence and the support of my legal team, the outcome was clear. The court ruled in my favor, nullifying the fraudulent sale of my business and awarding me damages for the financial and emotional toll Adam's actions had caused. With the business back under my control, I set out to rebuild what had been damaged. I reached out to employees, clients, and partners, assuring them of the company's stability and my commitment to transparency moving forward. Many of them returned, their loyalty restored by my willingness to confront the betrayal head-on. Financially, the damages awarded by the court helped stabilize the company and cover the costs of the legal battle. While it didn't erase the pain of the experience, it provided a solid foundation for the future. The business, once teetering on the brink of collapse, began to thrive again under my leadership. Personally, the victory was about more than just money or assets. It was about reclaiming my identity and proving to myself that I had the strength to overcome even the deepest betrayal. To ensure that Adam's betrayal would serve as a lasting lesson, I decided on a symbolic act of justice. I hosted a public event at the company's headquarters, inviting employees, clients, and members of the community who had supported us through the ordeal. The event was framed as a celebration of resilience and transparency. During my speech, I addressed the betrayal openly, without bitterness, but with firm resolve. This company has faced challenges that could have broken it, I said, but we are stronger because of the truth and because of the unwavering support of everyone here. As a final gesture, I unveiled a new company policy, a commitment to ethical practices and employee empowerment, ensuring that no individual would ever have unchecked power over the business again. The crowd erupted in applause, and the moment felt like the closing of a painful chapter. Adam wasn't present, of course, but the message was clear. His actions had consequences, and those consequences would reverberate far beyond his personal downfall. In the weeks that followed, life began to settle into a new normal. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace, a freedom that came from knowing the worst was behind me. I spent quiet evenings at home, reflecting on the journey and the lessons I had learned. I realized that while Adam's betrayal had taken so much from me, it had also given me something invaluable: clarity. I saw the strength I had within myself, the resilience of my team, and the importance of trust, not blind trust, but trust that is earned and nurtured. One evening, I found myself standing in the office, looking out at the city lights. The pain of the past was still there, but it no longer weighed me down. Instead, it felt like a distant echo, a reminder of what I had overcome. As I locked the office door and headed home, I felt a sense of closure. The scars of betrayal would always be a part of my story, but they no longer defined me. My life, my business, and my future were mine to rebuild, and for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to embrace it all. Looking back, the betrayal I experienced taught me lessons I never expected to learn. Trust, I realized, is a fragile thing, built over years yet destroyed in a moment. I learned that trust cannot be blind, even with those closest to us. Relationships require accountability, honesty, and mutual respect, and when those elements are missing, the foundation crumbles. Resilience became my greatest ally. There were moments when the weight of the betrayal felt insurmountable, but each day I chose to fight for what I believed in. I discovered strength I didn't know I possessed. The journey wasn't just about reclaiming my business. It was about reclaiming my sense of self-worth. For so long, I had defined myself by my relationships and my success, but the betrayal forced me to look inward. I realized my value wasn't tied to my business or anyone else's approval. I was more than the scars left by Adam's actions. The experience taught me to set boundaries, trust my instincts, and prioritize my own well-being over blind loyalty. Most importantly, I learned the power of forgiveness, not for Adam, but for myself. Forgiving myself for the trust I had given him and for not seeing the signs earlier was essential in moving forward. This wasn't just a story of betrayal. It was a story of survival, growth, and resilience. Rebuilding my life after the betrayal was both challenging and liberating. I started by focusing on the things I loved about my business, the creative aspects, the innovation, and the people who made it thrive. I restructured the company to foster a culture of transparency and collaboration, ensuring everyone felt valued and heard. Outside of work, I made a conscious effort to reconnect with the parts of myself I had neglected. I took up running again, a passion I had abandoned in the chaos of managing the business. Each mile felt like a small victory, a reminder that I was moving forward, physically, emotionally, and mentally. I also spent more time with people who truly mattered. Friends and family who had supported me became my anchor, reminding me of the beauty of genuine connections. I took short trips to places I'd always wanted to visit, savoring moments of peace and joy that had once felt out of reach. Slowly but surely, the pain began to fade. My days became filled with laughter, creativity, and purpose. The betrayal, while still a part of my story, no longer defined my present or my future. I had reclaimed not just my business, but my life. To truly move forward, I needed a symbolic gesture to close the chapter on the betrayal. One afternoon, I gathered all the documents, emails, and evidence of Adam's actions and placed them in a box. I drove to a quiet beach, the same place where I had once celebrated my first big business milestone. As the waves lapped at the shore, I burned the box, watching the ashes drift into the wind. The act wasn't about anger or revenge. It was about release. With each flicker of the flames, I felt lighter, as if the weight of the past was finally being lifted from my shoulders. I left the beach feeling free, ready to embrace the life ahead of me. The fire wasn't just an end, it was a beginning, a promise to myself that I would no longer be held back by the shadows of betrayal. Standing on the threshold of a new chapter, I feel an unshakable sense of hope. The scars of the past remain, but they serve as reminders of my resilience and growth. I've rebuilt my business stronger than ever, with a team that shares my values and vision. On a personal level, I've learned to cherish the small moments: morning coffee, sunsets, laughter with friends. Life is no longer just about achievements or success. It's about connection, joy, and purpose. As I look to the future, I see endless possibilities. There will be challenges, no doubt, but I am no longer afraid. The betrayal may have tested me, but it didn't break me. I am stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever comes next. The past is behind me, and the future is mine to shape. For the first time in a long time, I am excited to see where the journey takes me.